Thank you. It's a little wet. Thank you. Prabhupada ki jai. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunya Bihari. Yanamalava Punya Bhagavate Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravidikacharya Austotera Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Hoidas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shivasiti Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Mukunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Machuranam Ki Jai Jagadadasami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasidevi Ki Jai Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol All glorious ye assembled devotees, all glorious ye assembled devotees, all glorious ye assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale, Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharani Nivashesha, Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarni. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 8th Canto, 5th chapter, text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Shukhuvacha Rajan Udatam Etat Te Hare Karmaga Nashanam Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatam Tu Antaram Shrinu Shishaguvacha Rajanuditam etate Hare Karmaga Nashanam Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatam Tvantarang Shrinu Shishugovacha Rajanuditam etate Hare Karmaga Nashanam Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatam Tvantarang Shrinu Shishugovacha Rajanuditam etate Hare Karmaga Nashanam Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatam Tvantarang Shrinu. Okay.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Sri Shukavacha
Rajanuditam etate
Hare
Karmaga Nashanam
Hare Karmaga Nashanam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam Raivatam Kantaram Shrinu.
Sri Shukavacha Rajanuditam etate Hare Karmaga Nashanam Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu Sri Shukovacha
Sri Shukovacha
Vajanguritam Vichachay
Rajanguditam Vedate
Hare Kama Ganashanam
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu.
Ladies.
Sri Shukovacha
Sri Shukovacha
Rajamuditam Etate
Rajamuditam etate
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Yandra Muktam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu.
Sri Shukovacha
Rajamuditam etate
Rajamuditam etate
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu.
Sri Shukovacha
Sri Shukovacha
Rajamuditam Etate
Rajanguditam Vedate
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Hare Karma Ganashanam
Gajendra Mokshanam Punyam
Gajendra Mokshanam
Punyam
Raivatam Tvantaram Shrinu
Raivatam
Tvantaram Shrinu. Okay. Shri Shukovacha.
Sri Shukovacha
Sri Shukadeva Goswami said,
Sri Shukovacha Goswami said,
Rajan,
Rajan,
O king,
O king,
Uditam,
Uditam,
already described,
already described,
Etat,
Etat,
this,
this,
Te,
Te,
unto you,
unto you,
Hare,
Hare,
of the Lord,
of the Lord,
Karma,
Karma,
activity,
activity,
Oganashanam,
Asanasanam,
by hearing which
by hearing which
one can be freed from all misfortune.
one can be free from all misfortune.
Gajendra Mokshanam,
Gajendra Mokshanam,
deliverance of Gajendra,
deliverance of Gajendra,
the king of the elephants.
king of the elephants.
Punyam,
Punyam,
very pious to hear and describe.
very pious to hear and describe.
Raivatam,
Raivatam,
about Raivata Manu.
about Raivatam,
To, but, Antaram, in this millennium. Shrinu, kindly hear from me. So, translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, O king, I have described to you the pastime of Gajendra Mokshana, which is most pious to hear. By hearing of such activities, the Lord, one can be freed from all sinful reactions. Now please listen as I describe Raivata Manu. So there is no purport to this text nor the next few texts. So we'll continue reading until Prabhupada gives a purport. That's the etiquette I like to observe. So text 2, I'll just read. Panchamo Raivato Nama Manus Tamasa Sodara Bali Vinyadayastasya Sutta Harjuna Purvaka. The brother of Tamasa Manu was the fifth Manu named Raivata. His sons were headed by Arjuna, Bali, and Vinja. Text 3. Vibhur Indra Suragana Rajan Bhutara Yadaya Hiranya Roma Vidashira Udva Bhava Diyodvija. O king of the millennium of Raivata Manu, the king of heaven was known as Vibhu. Among the demigods were the Bhuttarayas, and among the 7 Brahmanas who occupy the 7 planets were Haranya Rama, Vidashira, and Urdhva Vahu. Text 4. Patni Vaikuntha Shubharsha Vaikuntha Sura Satamai Tayosva Kaleya Yajne Vaikuntho Bhagavan Swayam. From the combination of Shubhra and his wife Vaikuntha, there appeared the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vaikuntha, along with demigods who were his personal plenary expansions. And finally, text 5. Vaikuntha kapito yena loko loka namaskrita ramaya prajamanena devyata priya kamyaya. Just to please the goddess of fortune, the Supreme Personality of Vaikuntha, at her request, created another Vaikuntha planet, which is worshipped by everyone. So, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura remarks here that this Vaikuntha planet, like Srimad Bhagavatam, appears and is said to be born or created, but both Srimad Bhagavatam and Vaikuntha eternally exist beyond the material universes, which are enveloped by 8 kinds of coverings. Because that's earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, it's also false ego. As described in the 2nd canto, Lord Brahma saw Vaikuntha before the creation of the universe. Viradhagava Acharya mentions that this Vaikuntha is within the universe. It is situated above the mountain known as Loka Loka. This planet is worshipped by everyone. So, Om Gana Timidandasha Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Miditam Yena Tasmai Shigarve Namaha. So, let's talk about Vaikuntha. Because let's give a definition to the word. The word is actually sort of I'm not saying it's negative, but it's a negative definition. You understand? It's not a negative word, it's a positive word. But it's a negative definition. Kunta means, does anyone know? Anxiety, distress, and that's where we are right now. Dukkhalayam Shashvatam, as much as you don't want to accept that. And Vaikuntha means without distress, which is really interesting. And of course, in the material world, everyone is trying to alleviate their distress through different means, and Prahlad Maharaj says that when they try to alleviate the distress through different means, they increase the distress. As Prabhupada oftentimes talks about how people are driving at what probably called neck brake speed. Actually in English it's breakneck speed. But anyway, at neck brake speed, going so many miles every day to work. And the reason that they have to work is to pay for their car. And the reason they need a car is to go to work and to buy the groceries and everything like that. And, just the more arrangements we make. Of course, for Krishna, we make so many arrangements. That's called Yukta Vairagya. We're using this computer and so much modern technology. But technically, the more arrangements we make, the more anxiety there is, because you got to take care of all those arrangements too. Because the material energy, there's this thing called entropy. Things start to fall apart on themselves. So there's maintenance. I mean, building a building is fantastic, but maintaining it is like a pain in the neck because it keeps falling apart. I'm sure you have a lot of maintenance in these old buildings too, with the plumbing and everything like that. So I remember in the early days in New Vrindavan. This is before New Vrindavan started fracking and getting money from actually pushing liquids into the earth and creating earthquakes and having what noxious gas come out of your faucet every time you turn on the faucet. So New Vrindavan in the beginning was actually based on simple living, high thinking. And the devotees had rented, it was Kirtananda, who'd rented this farm high on the hill. And there was no electricity or anything high on the hill. And what the devotees were thinking about was that how are we going to wash our clothes? And so with the devotees, no electricity, remember. So devotees went to town without thinking and purchased a washing machine. electric washing machine. And there was no road going up there. And so it took like 4 or 5 devotees to carry this washing machine all the way up to the hill, to the top of the hill. And Prabhupada was watching, and Prabhupada said, Ugra karma. Just like we know that Pavarga, Pavarga is the name of our endeavor in this world. Prabhupada actually, citing the acharyas, analyzed this word Pavarga in different ways, like pa, ma, parishrama, foaming at the mouth, hard work, and ultimately mrityu, death. So it's a world of over-endeavor, and it's a world of anxiety. And of course then you have the typical example of someone who didn't want to get entangled was Markandeya Rishi. And Markandeya Rishi, he didn't even go to the trouble to build a hut. And he was asked, and he was going to live such a long life, according to the Bhagavatam. He was going to live such a long life that he was going to live for as many years as he had hair, many Brahmas, Brahma cycles. That's a long time, isn't it? Brahma's lifetimes. And that's, even one Kali Yuga is too long for me. But what to speak of a lifetime, what many Brahmas, he has hairs on his body. And he was asked, why don't you build a house, or at least a hut or something? And he said, his life is very short. Now, I'm not suggesting that we imitate him, and especially the modern culture, we do need all these different things. I remember I started a community one time, and there was a river, and I said to the devotees, you should wash your clothes in the river. And they thought I was crazy. And eventually they got washing machines, and in the meantime they went to the laundromat to wash their clothes. So I'm not suggesting that, but we should be aware excuse me, we should be aware that endeavoring more than necessary, because that's called over endeavor. Like we have this achahara prayasas japa japam niyamanraha. You understand? Prayasas. Over endeavor leads us to not have so much time for Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada would often say, simple living and high thinking. That was Prabhupada's vision for farm communities, actually. And of course nowadays, mostly it's high living and simple thinking. Reverse. First thing, high living, simple thinking. So, of course we have all these amenities and we need some certain things, but we have to be careful not to accept more than required. But for Krishna, we can accept everything. Like Prabhupada said, you could take a picture of him pulling the gold in, the money or the gold. For Krishna, then we're willing to take any headache. So, anyway, as far as Vaikuntha is concerned, being free from anxieties, or what is Vaikuntha, there are many localized Vaikuntha planets in this universe. And in the Bhagavatam it describes that Dhruva Maharaj has a Vaikuntha planet. It was given it by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's also the Shvetadvipa, like that. And of course there's the original Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual world. And those Vaikuntha planets, in general, apart from Goloka Vrindavan, which is actually the topmost part of the spiritual world, in those Vaikuntha planets, most of the residents, they have this thing called Sarupya Mukti. Sarupya Mukti means that they have the same form as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Lakshmi. So you have this story in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita where Gopakumar goes to Vaikuntha on his way to Goloka Vrindavan, and he encounters all these different personalities who look very similar, except for the Kaustubha and the Shrivats, who look very similar to Lord Vishnu and Lakshmi, and he starts to worship people who are not, or entities who are not God. And they just say, what is this guy doing here, And so finally he comes in touch with the Lord of Vaikuntha, And he's not quite satisfied. Of course, then he wants to go to Goloka Vrindavan because he's only satisfied by being situated in his eternal relationship with Krishna, which is in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan. So there's so many Vaikunthas. So in this material world, in addition to all these Vaikuntha planets, we have the holy places, like Vrindavan, Mayapur, Ayodhya, so many holy places, especially in India. You got all these holy rivers and holy places like that. And in addition, we have all these tirthas that have been established by great devotees. Because we know wherever a great devotee resides, or wherever a great devotee is, he turns that place into a holy place. In fact, the pure devotee, according to the Bhagavatam, Haribol, good to see you. A pure devotee, according to the Bhagavatam, can purify you in a holy place. You have the description of the descent of the Ganges in the Bhagavatam. And the Ganges was being called down by Bhagirath. And the Ganges sort of objected to coming down to this earth planet because she said that if I come down to this earth planet, all these rascals will bathe in me. And so Bhagirath had a way to solve her dilemma. Bhagirath said, all right, but also the great sages will bathe in you, and they will actually purify you. So a devotee like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, he can purify a holy place, which is interesting. He is a holy place. Wherever he goes is a holy place, and he can purify a holy place. And my personal experience was, the first time I met Prabhupada, is that I became free from anxiety. You know, when Prabhupada walked into the room or came to the temple where I was, that immediately I felt like I had gone back to Godhead. I mean, anybody who met Prabhupada will have that experience, isn't it? And you feel like, I'm already in the spiritual. I thought I was already Krishna conscious. Of course, I wasn't. And I thought I had already realized my spiritual identity too, which I hadn't. But it was just the experience of being in the physical presence of Prabhupada that really transported one to another realm. Because Vishwanath Chakravarti talks about this too. He says this is sort of a shadow attachment, an ecstasy that you can experience when you're at like really intense Krishna Katha or the association of a pure devotee. Then you can actually experience this mode or mood to a certain extent, the mood of Vaikuntha to a certain extent. So that's why it's very important. And the Bhagavatam, wherever the Bhagavatam is recited, that says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, wherever the Bhagavatam is being recited purely, that's also the spiritual world. And especially repeating the words of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, that's also in the spiritual world. It's like when I'm doing my deity worship in the morning, in my shilas, I play a class of Prabhupada's, and usually I just play the Bhagavad Gita class or something like that, and I'm transported to the spiritual world. Even if it's the Bhagavad Gita, which I've probably read about 100,000 times, and I know the philosophy and everything like that. It's very special to me. And, you know, it's very, very special when you hear Prabhupada like that. So, anyway, but as far as the pure devotee is concerned, he's always in the spiritual world. It's like we have Srila Prabhupada who left, in one sense, he left Vrindavan and to come here, well, not here, but he came to the Western world, and there's no question of him leaving Vrindavan. We cannot understand the mind and intelligence and the consciousness of a pure devotee because the pure devotee can be in the spiritual world and also manifest the presence here in the material world simultaneously. That's why one has to be very careful. Charyamam vijnanayam navamanye takarichit. The marcha buddha suyeta sarvadaya devamayo guru. One should never consider the spiritual master, or Prabhupada, let's talk about Prabhupada, an ordinary person. And elsewhere it's described, if you consider the Vaishnava as an ordinary person, or the deity to be made of stone or wood, that's hellish intelligence. So the question is, how can we always maintain ourselves in the Vaikuntha consciousness? And the question was raised yesterday, we were talking about this yesterday, about going home to visit parents. Especially going on to visit family members, parents, or associating with people who are not yet devotees, like flying in an airplane, which I'm going to do today, hopefully. How can we always maintain ourselves in this, what I described as a bubble of Vaikuntha? My answer was, you've got to create a bubble around you. And the way you do that is through transcendental sound. In other words, being always absorbed in the Mahamantra. One time I was, several times, I was on a TV interview with Prabhupada. There's one instance that comes to mind. We went with Srila Prabhupada. I was arranging TV interviews in Dallas, Texas for Srila Prabhupada. And so we went on this TV interview in this place called Fort Worth, which is about an hour away. So we were traveling with Prabhupada. It was a wonderful experience with Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, so we went to Fort Worth, and it was just me, Sasvarup Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada in the car. And so we get there, and the whole time Prabhupada was chanting. And then we get there, and the gentleman is interviewing Prabhupada, and Prabhupada has the beads in his hand, and he's softly chanting while the person is asking him the questions. I don't suggest doing that all the time, because people can get really upset with you. Because I used to do that with my mother when I first visited her. I thought Ma means Maya, of course Prabhupada said that. And I thought she was a Maya Devi. So I would just look at her feet and chant Hare Krishna. She said, talk to me, look at me. So that didn't go very far as my relationship with her. So, but Prabhupada, you can see that Prabhupada was always absorbed. And also, whenever you saw Prabhupada, you felt like chanting. It's not just that Prabhupada was always absorbed in Krishna, but he would evoke, just like seeing him and coming in contact with him, you just naturally chanted. Even if you were a demon, you naturally just felt like Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare. And you forgot about all your material anxiety. So it was like that. So another point is how to do that. Let's refer to the Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, first chapter, text 4. This is also how to be in Vaikuntha. Nivritta tarshar upagimana bhavosharat shotra mano viramat kautama shloka gunana vadat puman vidajeta vinal poshagnat. That this Bhagavatam, or the recitation of Krishna's pastimes, recitation of Krishna's names, Nivritta Tarshar. So there's the same thing, the Kuntha Tarshar. We have these miseries, anxieties, whatever in this word. So Nivritta means it gets rid of. Nivritta Tarshar, Upagiyamana. Bhavosrat Shrotra Mano Viramat. It's very pleasing to the mind. It's Ka Uttama Shloka Gunanavadat. These transcendental verses, transcendental sound vibration. So it's sound vibration that keeps us in Vaikuntha. And therefore, the pure devotee, but even though we're not pure devotees, we can not exactly copy the pure devotees, follow in their footsteps. We can be absorbed even in this material world, and then ultimately come to the platform of what Narayana Puraksarve Nakutasya Vidyati, Swargapavarga Narakeshu Apitulyartha Darshana. This is Lord Shiva speaking, who was describing the topmost devotee of Narayan. And he was referring to Chitraketu. Chitraketu, of course, a little bit of the history. Chitraketu had just offended Parvati and gotten cursed by Parvati. And Chitraketu, in spite of that curse that he was going to become a demon, he bowed down to Parvati. Instead of counteracting the curse, getting angry with Parvati, he said, "Thank you, Mataji." And Lord Shiva glorified him. Narayana Purak Sarve, the topmost devotee of Narayan. Nakutashna Bhivyati Naswar. He doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he's in Swarga or Upavarga. Swarga means heaven. Upavarga means liberated, or Narakeshu, hell. Api Tulyartha Darshan, he sees all these places as exactly the same. So, like Prabhupada also gave the example of a wheat threshing machine. That if you take that means a machine that harvests wheat. So if you take a wheat threshing machine and you send it wherever you're going to send it, that's all it knows how to do. So if you take a devotee, all he knows how to do is serve Krishna and preaching. Just like sometimes we are on the street. Well, we used to be distributing books when I was pious. So sometimes we go out, even now. I was out with Vaisheshika recently. I was amazed. He could just like get anyone to stop, anyone to take a book. And me, I distributed one book for his 100 as a proportion. But anyway, so, and you run, in America, you run into these Christians. And what they say to you is, you're going to hell. The typical thing. I don't know if they do that here.
Not so much.
Not so much. They're more pious in Sweden. So, and I say, that's fine as long as I can serve God there. Of course, I don't really believe that. I don't want to go to hell. But, and they become shocked. What are you talking about? And Prabhupada gave the example that you can go, let's say the king or a minister or someone could go into a prison, not to be a prisoner, but to actually help the prisoners. You understand? So in the same way, a devotee, a pure devotee, of course, can go to hell and help the people in hell. And I was thinking that in hell the preaching would be kind of easy, because you don't have to convince people the material world is suffering. Isn't it? You say there's suffering. Oh yeah, we already understand that. And if you go to heaven, then you say the material world is suffering. They say, don't spoil it for us. Because they have mangoes as big as this building, sense gratification, all that other nice stuff. But a devotee, Prabhupada said devotees like that. Wherever you go, he's in the spiritual world. It really doesn't matter for him. So Prabhupada came to the West, and he wasn't in the West. He was in the spiritual world. Sometimes some of his godbrothers criticize, he'd like to hang out with the hippies or something like that. No. Prabhupada was an ocean of compassion and wanted to help people, and he was always in the spiritual world, bringing the spiritual world with him and giving people the spiritual world. So that's Krishna consciousness. So anyway, that's my understanding of Vaikuntha. So I want to keep it short. Let's see if there's any questions, because I have to leave this morning to go to Finland. So anyone have any questions about any of these points, about Vaikuntha, about any of the things we read in the Srimad Bhagavatam? So in other words, this is pretty much corroborates what Brahma Hurta was asking about before, that we are in the spiritual world. We actually are in the spiritual world. We just have to have the right consciousness. Or also that verse, Vishwam Purna Shukayate. that a great devotee sees the whole world as blissful. So you have a
Where's that verse?
Vishwam Purna Shukayate. I forget. We can look it up. It's in the database. Prabhupada used it quite often. Vishwam Purna Shukayate. Shukayate. That the material world is blissful for a pure devotee. And that's, and so obviously it may not be blissful for us now. But if we concentrate on Prabhupada's service and Krishna's service, then we can always be happy in this world. So any questions? Other questions? Yes.
When one is having this feeling of connection with spiritual world,
Yeah.
for example, when you are listening to Srila Prabhupada, I can't, of course, compare my feeling of being connected
Mm-hmm.
through you to Srila Prabhupada and then to spiritual world, but but does it develop? Does it go somewhere?
Go.
Do you remember if it have changed during your
Oh my
Krishna
God.
consciousness? I'm just thinking.
It hasn't changed. I'm more of a rascal now that I'm not doing book distribution anymore. So,
Should it?
that's anyway. So, what happens? Okay, let's just talk about the progress of devotional service in general, rather than getting to me personally. Adoshradata sadhu sango ta bhajana kriya. So, as one progresses, one can judge one's spiritual advancement or realization by, Prabhupada said, by the anartas, anarta nivriti. The anartas start to go away, like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, etc., like that. Then after that, one becomes steady in devotional service. It's called nishta. And after that, one gets ruchi, a taste. This is the progress listed in the by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also presented by Rupa Goswami. And then after one gets a taste, and then ashakti, one gets completely attached to Krishna, and bhava gets emotions, and finally prema. So, what is it? Goranga balite habi pulaka sharir. Hari Hari Dayani Bhavi near. So we should hanker for that stage that when not only are we free from anxieties, like I said, Vaikuntha, thank you for asking the question, but Vaikuntha means to be free from anxieties, but when we're actually feeling, every time we hear Krishna Katha, Goranga Balite Habi, Lord Chaitanya's name, Hari Hari Nayani Bhavi near, we feel tears coming from the eyes and the shivering of the body. And so that's a symptom of advancement. Of course, Lord Chaitanya talks about that. Nayanam galudashru darya vadanam gadgara rudyagira pulaka nichitam bapukada tavanama grahane bhavishyati. When will that day be mine? When I come to that point. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has this famous song. What is it? Kabhi Habi Bolo Se Dinamar. Beautiful song. When will that day be mine? Aparada Kuche, Harinama Ruchi. When these offenses go away, Harinama Ruchi, when will I have a taste for the holy name? So these are the symptoms of advancement, without getting personal. Did you find that verse?
No, I just noted it.
Okay.
For that later.
I was wondering if you found it, because I'd like to have the I mean, I could find the reference myself in the database. So, good question. Yes?
Yeah, you were speaking about that first encounter with your previous mother. I was wondering about a more balanced approach where you still remember Krishna, but you're also able to kind of connect to the family members, if you had some good ideas for that. Or...
Well, the problem, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, not in class, but separately, that there's challenges when meeting one's parents for the first time when one joins Krishna consciousness, because not just because they're one's parents, but there's all sorts of impressions, some skaras that are actually you really connect to. when you meet people who you knew previously. And so it's a situation where when one first comes to Krishna, at least as a Western person, people from India may be different, where one is searching for one's identity. Because Krishna consciousness means basically not to change your identity, but to understand your real identity, but to try to sarvopati vinirmuktam tatpadvaina nirmalam, to try to get rid of these other designations and identities that you have. Really, because all these identities are actually just upadis or false things. So that's why it's a challenge meeting one's friends, family for the first time. And I, like any new devotee, it was a challenge for me, because you fall back into your past habits of thinking. So after a while, and also I did try to preach heavy to my father too, and he did not appreciate that. And my brother, as a younger brother, he got scared. He couldn't get angry because he was a younger brother. Chotabai, anyways, he was younger brother, and so he said, "Don't spoil it for me. Ignorance is bliss." So, this is my experience with my family. Ignorance is bliss. And so, after a while, I came to the conclusion that yes, I'm a devotee, and then my relationship with Prabhupada is very strong, as you can see, and so my identity changed. Well, not my identity, but my understanding of my identity changed as servant of Krishna. And so I was able to come and see my mother and just see her and be loving towards her without any, feeling that, I'm going to slip back into whatever consciousness I had before. And just see her as a spirit soul. And then I dealt with her just as my mother. And of course, a few times I slipped. Like one time I was talking to her, and she was talking about how she had eaten chicken, and I couldn't, somehow or other I said to her, "You're cannibal." So it didn't go over very well. A few times, I slipped back into my fanatic devotee consciousness that I imbibed from the early days of the movement, which many of us imbibed. And so, but after a while, it was just very loving atmosphere, and then before she left her body, I called her on the phone, and she said, "Son, I have something to reveal to you." She said, "I'm a Hare Krishna." And of course she was suffering from some dementia at that time. So I said, "Mom, you know something? I'm a Hare Krishna too." She said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Even though she'd gone to Rath Yatra and experienced all these things. And finally, when it got time to leave her body, I was on the opposite side of the world in Australia. And I called one of the devotees who'd been working with me, a very nice lady. I said, "You got to go, fly to New York, see my mother." So she went. My mother was actually waiting for a devotee, either me or a devotee, to leave her body. So she flew to New York and had another friend pick her up at the airport, drive her to my mother's apartment in the Upper East Side of New York, and goes into my mother's apartment, tells the nurse, just leave for a little while, take a break. She lies down next to my mother, gives my mother Tulsi leaf, water, and everything like that. Start chanting into my mother's ear, and then within half an hour she leaves the body. Amazing. So it also proves that, if someone takes up Krishna consciousness, then the whole family's benefited. So my mother left her body, hearing the holy names, in a Krishna conscious way. It's amazing, in spite of my fanatic behavior in the beginnings. There's a happy ending, isn't it? So I felt, and the devotees asked me, "Are you mourning?" I said, "No, I'm ecstatic." I did, for my parents, my mother, the best thing. And even my father, before he left the body, he attributed his business success to my being a devotee. So by a softer approach, the point I make is by a softer approach, and actually compassionate approach. Like you see, I observed Prabhupada talking to people, and some people, especially in India, he was very friendly with, and everything like that, and all the devotees are thinking, why isn't he going to preach to them? But, Prabhupada was expert according to time, place, and circumstance in dealing with people. But he never lost his spiritual vision like that. So hopefully after a few years in the Krishna conscious movement, we can come to that point of not losing our spiritual vision when we're talking to people who are, and I'm deliberately saying, who are not yet Krishna conscious. I do not like the word demons when I'm dealing with people, or seeing people as demons, who haven't realized their Krishna consciousness now. Like Prabhupada said, everyone's in a sleeping condition. So it's a question of wake up, Jeev Jago, Gorda Chanda, Bole. So that's my experience. Yes?
I found that verse. It's Prabhudananda Saraswati's Chaitanya Chandramrita, verse number 5.
Yeah.
And Srila Prabhupada indeed quotes it
quite often, yeah.
That especially these 3 words that you quoted.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear the full
Yeah, let's hear the full verse.
The translation? Or the verse?
Yeah, the whole verse.
The translation.
Yeah, whatever.
For a devotee who has received Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's merciful glance, Kaivalya, merging into the existence of Brahman appears hellish. No. I read it wrong. Who has received Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's merciful glance, Kaivalya, merging into the existence of Brahman, appears hellish.
Yeah.
The heavenly planets appear like phantasmagoria. The senses appear like serpents with broken teeth.
Yeah.
The entire world becomes a replica of Vaikuntha.
Yeah.
And the position of demigods headed by Lord Brahma and Lord Indra is considered equal to that of a tiny insect. The position of Brahma is like that of an insect.
That's an amazing verse, isn't it?
Yeah. And in regards to the purport of today, so Lord Brahma, before he created the life forms,
Yeah.
he saw Vaikuntha within this universe.
Yeah.
Right? And then
because it's a permanent Vaikuntha
and
planet.
then Prabhupada says in the purport as described in the 2nd canto.
Uh-huh.
So I looked this up in the 2nd canto, and there is the 9th chapter
Right.
where all this is described in detail. It's a fairly long chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And then Srila Prabhupada concludes today's purport that this Vaikuntha, it's kind of a secondary Vaikuntha.
Right.
It is situated above the mountain known as Lokaloka,
Uh-huh.
and then this planet is worshipped by everyone.
Right.
Now in the 2nd canto, and that's kind of confusing, I must say. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
It says, in that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail,
That's right.
nor is there any of their influence in goodness.
Yeah.
So no tinge of the lower modes. There is no predominance of the influence of time.
Right.
So what to speak of the illusory external energy? It cannot enter that region.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes the difficult part. Without discrimination, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's beyond my pay grade.
I haven't found it yet in the second in the
Well, the demon. I mean, if I had to guess, speculate, so to speak, I would say that demons also refer to a certain family.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that people are demoniac. It's a little bit different.
Demonic dynasty.
There's like Prahlad Maharaj.
Right.
Prabhupada said that virtually demoniac blood flowed in his veins. And what to speak of Bali Maharaj and and others who are, who are demons.
Mm-hmm.
But the word demon can refer to. I mean, if I had to speculate, that's how I would answer. The demons refers to a particular dynasty, like the Danavas. Danu,
Mm-hmm.
Titi, and Danu's descendants. Because many of them are devotees.
Yeah. Oh, that makes
So that's how I would.
That works.
That's it. That's how I would explain it. Yeah. So that's it. But it's also interesting. It's within this material world, and then there's, it just corroborates what you said yesterday. That we're in the spiritual world, because within this material world, there's the spiritual world. I mean, how to understand that? I don't know, but it's there.
Well, wherever one talks about Krishna, that's the.
It manifests the spiritual world. It's like, it's Vaikuntha. It manifests the spiritual world. And wherever Prabhupada was the spiritual world. Wherever the Bhagavatam is. That's why Prabhupada said that if you distribute the Bhagavatam and even the people don't read it, they put it on a shelf in their house. It makes the house auspicious. So it's like energy. I forget the scientific term for it. No, it's not like a. What is that term where you can go from one part of the universe to another without
Teleportation?
No, without going through space. Is it not black hole? Is another
The wormholes?
wormhole? Yeah. So you may equate it like that.
Yeah. A temple is a
Wormhole.
kind of, well, it's actually the end of, it's the spiritual part, and the visiting the temple is the wormhole, I would say.
Yeah. And just like, all right, let's take the word tirtha. The word tirtha means in Sanskrit a crossing place, which is interesting. Tirthara actually means to cross. And generally, it's taken as to cross up. And then you have the word avatara, which means to a cross downer, a person who crosses down. It's almost like the word tirtha is very similar like to the word bridge in English. Bridge. So so that's like wormhole.
Portal.
Portal. Yeah, that's a better word because worm is like a.
Yeah.
Yeah, forgive me, Krishna. Wormhole, portal. Okay, that comes from the Latin for door.
Sorry?
Porta. The word port comes from the Latin from door,
yes.
Meaning door.
Yes.
So portal. So it's a portal. Yeah, it's like a portal or a crossing. That's tirtha. That's what tirtha means, a portal.
I mean, we are not here in this, right now we're not in Sweden.
No, hopefully not. Well, it depends on our consciousness. Like Prabhupada could be in New York and in Vrindavan, and someone can be in Bhagavatam class and be, in wherever, downtown Stockholm, or whatever attracts you, or in bed. So, wherever your consciousness is, that's where you are. We can transport our consciousness. I mean, I experienced that, at least the first time I chanted Hare Krishna. I don't know about now. But, the first time you chant Hare Krishna, you actually find your consciousness being transported to another realm. So that's like a portal. And, we can experience that anytime we chant really attentively, we can experience that.
At a nice kirtan, there is no fear. One doesn't feel anything.
No.
Isn't it? It's Vaikuntha.
Yeah, that's Vaikuntha. If one's absorbed, that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. If it's a static kirtan, a static Bhagavatam, or association with the devotee, he says it gives you that taste.
I mean, who worries about the material problems when you're in good association or good kirtan,
Yeah,
right?
then you don't worry
Yeah.
until you walk out of the temple room.
Yeah. Shouldn't go there.
Not until your stomach starts talking to you that you're hungry. All right, I think I'm going to have to end because I have to get ready to leave and everything. So thank you very much. Thank everybody for the hospitality. All glories